Our keynote tonight, Mr. Michael Bush.
Thanks for coming out. Congratulations to all the tremendous award winners. Thank you to Sean Murphy for that great introduction. It's great when people say nice things about you and you're alive to hear it. So the question tonight for me, and the question that I'd like all of you to ponder is, am I all in? I'm gonna be thinking about it while I'm up here tonight. I'd like you to be thinking about the same thing. And as I think about it and press myself and push myself to be more all in, I need role models and examples. So I've chosen the best entrepreneur that I've ever met, my father. That's where it all starts. This is my father. This is our family footage. This is 1960. He's on a farm in Barnesville, Georgia, where he was born. His father's father was a slave on this land. His father was a sharecropper, and he and his brother ended up buying this land. That's me. You know, I tell my sons, I was working when I was 2 years old. Here's proof. You know, so I don't want to hear about it. So my father made a move and came to California. This is how he got to California. Because this is the only way a man who looked like him could get to California. And he used to say, oh, the hard part, Mike, wasn't getting on the train because it was always moving. The hard part was getting off the train. Because it would be late at night and you would be forced off the train. But he came, just like a lot of people in this room. We all have our stories. He persevered. My journey has been nothing compared to his journey. He went to the shipyards in Richmond. He was in the South and had heard about the land of opportunity, California. The war was going on. It's where a man who looked like him could come and get a good job. And here's a shot from the shipyards in Richmond. One thing you'll notice is 4 women sitting in the front. You know, when the women's liberation movement started, my mother and other mothers like her would say, I don't know what those women are talking about. We've been working just like men. You know, this is no fun. There's my mother and father. So in this shot, my mother is 17, my father is 29. Now this is the shot when they got married in public. They actually got married, my mother was 15 and he was 28. So my father was a smart man. The way these things happened is, when you came out from the South, where was a man like my father supposed to stay? He thought it was going to be different than it was when he got here. When he got here, he found out there weren't a lot of places he could stay. So he stayed in a boarding house in South Berkeley. And women like my mother were bought, shout out to South Berkeley. Women like my mother were bought from the South, about the age 12, moved out here, and her job was to work in that home. And she was lucky enough to meet a man like my father, rather than some other things that could have happened. So this union, this powerful union, started this, which is my father and his company, B.T. Bush Construction. He was the first African American to start a contracting business in the city of Berkeley. And like a lot of us, started the business not because, oh, I want to be an entrepreneur. That's not how he started it. The way he started it was, he was working as a construction foreman, securing loads to prepare them to go on a ship to go to war. That's how he got started. One day, the guy who was his boss said, hey, BT, we need you to train this young guy. My dad remembers the guy was drunk. He said, we need you to train this young guy. He can't hold a hammer, but we need you to train him, to join the team. My father trained him. 2 days later, they gave that guy my father's job and fired my father. So immediately, he had no option. He started BT Bush Construction. He needed some things to get the job done. One of them was a truck. So he went to a bank, got a loan for the truck on a Monday. That's amazing. About 3 days later, after he had been working with the truck, the bank called and said, hey, we're calling the loan. He was like, what? We're calling the loan. We want the money back. He was like, calling the loan? My father didn't know what that meant. So he said, the bank said, you've got to pay the loan back. He goes, I don't have the money. I can give you the truck back. We don't want the truck. He tried to take the truck back. They wouldn't take the truck back. So my father calls his brother, who's in Barnesville, Georgia, a farmer, and says, I need some money. And my uncle Warren, was like, oh no, city boy. You left, you were going to the land of opportunity because it was gonna be different for you. Look at you now. So here my father was. He went to the bank and they said, well, guy closed the door. Maybe I can help you out. You bring me $15 a week in a brown bag and you can keep the truck. So it was a kickback, and my father did it. I didn't know this story until I was 20 years old, because my father saved a lot of stories until it was later. But I do remember going with him in the bank. He'd tell me to wait. He'd go in the room, hand the bag over, and come back out. Later, I understood what was actually happening. And then when I think about my dad, I think about this quote, because it reminds me of a lot of people in this room, a lot of people who got awards today, which is the struggle of being a small business person. It is not easy. But the thing that I love about the people who have been on this stage and the people I've met at ICA is nothing can dampen the hope and the spirit and the optimism. No matter what happens, don't get a bank loan. Maybe we'll get it next time. That's the spirit that my father had, and it's the spirit of a lot of the ICA companies. It's kind of the spirit of the successful small business person. Here's a shot, me in the middle, and my brother and my sister. And this is when my dad would say, boy, I work 24 hours a day. I say, you weren't working 24 hours a day, okay? These kids got here somehow. So that's my brother, Booker Teleferio Bush, named after my father, Booker Teleferio Bush. He went on to Yale, got a degree in chemical engineering, went on to Yale, got a medical degree, and retired as a professor and a practitioner of medicine at Harvard University. My sister, Christina Marie, went to the University of Portland, got a degree in critical care nursing. Her whole nursing career has been the births that are the most troublesome, either for the baby or the mother. And then there's me in the middle. Now, what I think is interesting when I look at this picture is, I know the photographer saying, smile. Now, see how obedient my sister is? See how obedient my brother is? And look at me. I mean, at 2 years old, you couldn't tell me what to do. I'm up here now without a teleprompter because I don't like telling myself what to do. You know, there's something about our spirit where we kind of have that dysfunction, you know, as small business people and as entrepreneurs. So, here's a shot of my dad doing his favorite thing, which is telling me what to do. And he was really, really good at it. And this is my dad at age 73. So I think you can see the physicality of my father. This was age 73. Now at age 70, when he retired from building, he didn't have a contracting business where he told people what to do. He came home every day with his hands bloody and his back soaking wet with sweat. That was every single day. He'd come home, go upstairs, take a shower, dress, and come back down for dinner. And you could smell the aftershave. That's what he did every single day. But here he is. And when I think about him, I always remember this, because my father was tough, but my mother was like, anything I did was okay. Oh, my baby gonna be president one day. You know, that's the way my mother talked, no matter what I did. So I went through this thing where I went through about 4 different schools in 4 years. And something would go wrong, because I did something wrong, and my mother would come, and then she'd be like, oh, Mike's going to another school. And I remember one night, I was 6 years old or 7 years old, 2nd grade, and my father came into my bedroom, sat down, the door was open so we could kind of see the TV room, and he said, boy, you may have your mama fooled, but you don't have me fooled. You better get your act together, I'm gonna turn your water off. Now I didn't know what he meant, but I knew what he meant. And so he said, come on, boy. And so we went into the TV room, which is where we watched TV. We'd watch TV for about an hour, and then he'd fall asleep in the chair, and then he'd go upstairs and go to sleep, and get up at 4:30 the next day and go to work. Never missed a day of work. This ad would come on TV. Some of you remember this ad. And it would come on, and the saying would be, a mind is a terrible thing to waste. And my father would immediately turn to me and say, boy, your mind is just a terrible thing. That's my father. So these are some of the lessons, which some of you have taken the class. You know, there's these things I'm talking about. Most of the things I pass on, I learned from my father, not at Stanford Business School. It's a great place to go to school, but I'm passing on some other things. Number one is beware of debt. That's what my father taught me. I hate debt today. And it all comes from that truck story. It was drilled in my brain from the minute he told me that story to beware of debt. So to watch cash, and by the way, cash is more important than profit. That's what he would say, and he wasn't an accountant, but it made a lot of sense to me. He would also say, always have more than one paycheck. Mike, you can't have one paycheck. I don't care what they're telling you and how much they love you and how many awards they give you. You gotta have more than one paycheck. And that's what he learned when he was on a job and he came back and didn't have one. The other thing he taught me was beware of 415. And I would say, what do you mean, Daddy? And he would be like, look, Mike, now this started at about 11 or 12 years old. He would say, there are people that are gonna be working for you one day, and they're gonna talk to their tax man and find out they owe taxes, and they're gonna expect you to pay for them. I'm like, Daddy, what are you talking about? He's like, they're gonna expect you to pay for them. About 10 years later, I figured out what he was saying. So he was like, settle all your affairs in March. So when they get their tax bill, they can't come to you. Because all of a sudden when they get their tax bill, all the subcontracting costs go up. The other thing he told me was beware of the last invoice. He said, Mike, you're never gonna get what you're owed on the last invoice. Now this has been true throughout my career. But he told me as a young person, you're never gonna get it, you do a great job, you do everything you said you were gonna do, and the last paycheck, they're gonna cut it, they're gonna discount it. So you gotta figure that out. Don't think you're gonna get it. Now my dad was clever, so he had many tricks to enable himself, which I learned, to get the last invoice. One of them, since he was a builder, he would finish the job, he wouldn't get the last invoice, and suddenly that customer would call, and they would say, BT, our house is filled with smoke. And my dad would go, oh. So he'd go over and open the door, smoke's coming out. And my dad would say, I need the $423. What are you talking about? I need the $423 that you owe me. There's some people here who know me and they know the story. He'd get the $423, he'd go up on the roof, and he'd drop a brick through the chimney, because he had put a sheet of glass in the chimney. So when there was a fire, their house would fill up with smoke, because he was gonna get his money. There's another thing my father taught me. We were building in Berkeley and Oakland, and he built a lot of Section 8 housing. I don't know if you know what that is, but if you don't, you can Google it later. Some of you really know what it is. Okay, I can tell. All right, so we built a lot of Section 8 housing, and it was tough, because you would have to go collect rent on the 1st. And if you had a Section 8 building, it was all cool, everybody was wonderful, but there'd be one unit, where this guy was in there, usually dealing drugs. On that day, you'd have to go with a baseball bat. And it would be me and my father. And I hated it. And when I was little, my dad would go up, and I could stand down low and watch him. I don't know why it shifted all of a sudden. And he was like, boy, you go up. You know, and so it was tough, learned how to deal with it. But I remember I went away to college, and I came back, and I said, Daddy, look, I've learned this stuff, like diversity, diversification. We need to do some buildings up by UC Berkeley. And so he would say, oh, up by UC Berkeley, like where all the white kids are. I go, yeah. And he would say, I'm very disappointed in you. If we don't build this housing for these people, who else is gonna do it? This is the final lesson I wanted to share about my father. After all that this man went through, and I'm telling the good PG version about what this man went through, this is the kind of thing he would say to me. Mike, when you're negotiating business, I was 14 or 15. That other guy has a family. Even if he's mean-spirited, some of the meanest people I've ever met have really nice families. You gotta take care of their families, Mike. You can't make all the money. And I thank him today for that lesson. This is a shot of Hewlett-Packard. I left here, went down to Stanford, finished, went to Hewlett-Packard. It was a great place to learn. Silicon Valley was hot, it was young, and it was new. It was very, very exciting, and I was very, very lucky. But I wanted to pass on what I learned here. Kindly listen. There was a man named Carl Nell. who was my boss's boss. And when I got there was a lot of things I didn't know. And I'd sit down at the cafeteria, and one thing my friends will tell you, I love to eat. So when it hits the table, because in my house, when it hit the table, there was no words. We watched Beaver, Ward Cleaver and them, but we didn't eat like that. There was no, how was your day, dear? It was hit the table and clickling, clacking, and then it stopped. So I kind of ate like that. Well, this guy, Carl Nell, who would always say, kindly listen, that's how he'd start a meeting. He takes me, after about 2 weeks, to a French restaurant in Palo Alto, sits me down. I've never seen anything like it. Nice pink tablecloth, 5 or 6 forks. I don't know what's happening. But I'm looking at it like, something's happening. And so he goes, Mike, slow down, outside in, outside in. So I learned how to work outside in. Now, I was hungry, so when it came, I grabbed the fork I liked. He goes, no, Mike, outside in. But I'll never forget what that man did, and that he took the time to do something that's hard to do, which is tell me I didn't know how to eat, and do it in a really nice, compassionate, caring way. I left Hewlett-Packard and went to Kaiser Permanente. Those are the buildings right across the street. And here I learned that perception is not reality. I remember there was a lot of talk then about, oh, Kaiser this, Kaiser that. And when I got there and I met people, I met the most remarkable, committed people, hardest working people I've seen in my career. So I learned perception isn't reality. Sometimes we can look at a big company and have this impression, but don't underestimate the people that are within it. Don't take a broad brush and say, I don't like that company and everybody in it. You may not like that company, there are some truly remarkable people in it. Stanford. After working at Kaiser for 10 years, I went back to Stanford to get a business degree. I was very lucky, very fortunate. Something happened to me when I was there, and I felt like, okay, it was time for me to do my thing. Because even though I had had a good career, I just didn't feel like I was a good business person. Now I had my father's standard, but I just didn't feel like I was a good business person. So I decided it was time to prove it. So I started this company called Decision Pathways. The lesson that I learned here was that I wasn't who I thought I was. And what I meant was, when I was at Kaiser, because I was a senior executive, everybody loved me. All the big company people at the top of the companies loved Michael Bush. Oh, Michael Bush, we love you, we love you. Once Michael Bush left Kaiser Permanente, I'd be like, hi, this is Michael, click. So I quickly learned it wasn't Michael Bush that they loved. It was Michael Bush in that position at Kaiser Permanente that they loved. It's a very humbling experience. But I continued to learn. I started to figure it out. My business looked like this. It wasn't good. But I did learn that desperation waters the seeds of creativity. When you're desperate and you have no alternative, you'll do basically anything. And creativity comes out of that. Solutions come out of that. My business took off. Got a project in Southern California. Got a project at Howard University Hospital, and it just took off. Before I knew it, I had about 15 people working for me around the country, doing various projects. Everything was fantastic. I didn't know what I was doing, and that made it great. As it really started to grow, I figured, there had to be some way of getting my arms around this thing, and I came up with this thing called the 8 Factors Framework. And I got to practice it and to work on it and prove to myself that it worked, because really all I was trying to do was prove to myself that I was a good business person. Didn't matter what anybody thought. Just like today. It only matters if I feel I'm doing what I'm supposed to be doing correctly. That's a picture of me after I met a guy named Dan Whalen. I was doing my thing, he was doing his thing. And he was doing more of his thing than I was doing. So he found out about me and said, hey, I want us to come together. We walked around the city of Oakland, worked out a deal. And I said, there's only one condition. I gotta run it, and I gotta run it completely. And he was like, that's music to my ears, because I'm through. So, gave me the keys, worked our deal out, and I got to run this combined business. Before we knew it, we were wildly successful, and I brought this picture because I am happy in this picture. We're doing business across the United States. We've got hundreds of people. We're doing business in Canada. We're doing business in Europe. Things I never imagined growing up here Growing up in Berkeley, going to Barnesville, Georgia every summer. I just never imagined it. And I was feeling like, finally, I'm a business person. This is what I learned. People are everything. A lot of people say this. Not everybody believes it. I learned and figured it out a lot of with the help from Dan Whalen. Because what he would say to me is, Mike, we do these business things. We both went to Stanford Business School. That's not what this is about. This is about building people and building yourself and rebuilding yourself. So he would say, we're going to build people by building things. And that became my mantra, and still is my mantra today. It is all about the people, and it's about me getting better and me learning and trying to share what I have. This is a map of where we did business. The reason I wanted to share it is a lot of times people talk about doing business in the inner city. We had an office in every one of those cities, at least 30 employees in every one of those cities, growing, thriving businesses. And I was on a panel in back east in Boston, and Michael Porter was there talking about the Inner City Initiative, and he was talking at the same time. That's a tough matchup. Now, he had written about doing business in the inner city. He had done a lot of research about doing business in the inner city. I was doing business in the inner city. There were 300 people in that room, 7 in mine, and the 7 in mine were there by accident. I learned a lot from that. One thing I've learned is that there's nothing like operational experience. And I'm lucky that I'm able to bring some of that to ICA's benefit. I also want to say that for some of you who send, a check back east, you can keep some of it here because we actually know how to run inner city businesses here. This is the other thing I learned. The smart rat gets the cheese. This is actually a mouse. I love this mouse. Let me tell you what I love about this mouse. I know some of you are squeamish. It won't be up here for long. What I love about this mouse is if you look at this shot, there's a flat way for him to get to this cheese. But he's like, I could go that way, but there's the cheese. And one of my mentors taught me, Mike, the smart rat always gets the cheese. So there are rats running around all over the place. He's just there looking at it. He's innovative. He was creative. He didn't run where everybody else ran. He's looking over the top. And I learned in business, sometimes it wasn't best for me to show up to try and get work. Sometimes it was best for me to have somebody else who looked different go to get the work. You can judge that however you want to. This is reality. There's some places in this country where it was better for me to send somebody else. Pleasanton, California. True story. I had to send somebody else to go get that work because I was told I would never get it. I didn't get it, created another company, sent somebody else, they got it. So actually, I did get it. So what I'm saying here is the smart rat does get the cheese. But there's another thing I think about here. This mouse is looking at that cheese, but he's not like jumping over the wall. I kind of imagine this mouse is kind of like me. He's like, you know what? The last 7 mice who came back in the cage and smelled like cheese, they carried him out on a little mouse stretcher. Which taught me, you don't need every customer. There's some customers you don't want. Just let the cheese go. So we kept growing, got bigger, got bought by Tetra Tech, publicly traded company. Fantastic, great parties. I learned about running a publicly traded company. It's a great experience. I had a chairman of the board. I had a board of directors. And I learned something very, very important. I'm unemployable. I'm the same little boy. I had a job all of a sudden. It didn't work out. So, moved on. Started a company called the Matmar Group. It's done a lot of work around the world. That's where Sean and I met, traveled around the world doing business together. Named after my 2 sons, Matthew and Martin. I was free again, feeling great. I was on the board at the East Bay Community Foundation at the time. Mike Howe was running it and asked me to go and help with this company, Oakland Advisors. Some of you don't know, that's what it was called first, before it was Inner City Advisors. I went there, I met some remarkable people who were trying to help business. And I met this powerhouse woman, Darian Louie. And the reason I put Darian up is because she was a contractor at the time. At this time, it was a little tough for Oakland Advisors. A lot of work to kind of stabilize it. Don Rinke was there, Jack Russey was there, I believe Audrey was there. These people very, very committed, had to get the thing stabilized, and they hired Darian. And she was the right person. I remember my first meeting with her, I'll never forget it. She was like, Mike, hi, yeah. Anyway, we need $45,000. If you want, you could pay $15,000 a year. I'm like, I didn't even remember her name. But that's how it went. If you know Darian, you'll know what I'm talking about. And by the way, my son's got a fundraiser at his school. Anything you could do, I'd appreciate it. And he's interested in playing the saxophone. I heard you play the saxophone. Do you have an extra one for him? You know what I did? $15,000, $500, and here's a saxophone. I mean, what else can you do? Jose Corona. She went and recruited Jose, along with some others. Here's Jose with his son, doing some new age parenting. You know that new parenting where you stoop down and meet him eye to eye? Jose, let me just tell you, you need to stand up and look down on him. Okay, as long as you can, because it will change. You're gonna be eye to eye before you know it, trust me. I was sitting at the kitchen table, trying to open this jar of pickles. I was like, and Matt was like, I got it. And I was like, oh, hell no. He like takes it, whoop. I was like, through. But anyway, so we got Jose Corona, fantastic. And then I met these guys from Premier Organics. I met these guys and a couple of other partners they had working with them at the time, Matt and Jason, and started to get addicted to this thing. I met these remarkable people who were just like my father. It didn't matter what you said, they were optimistic and upbeat, and it was gonna happen. And they had a few nuts, and that was about it. You know, now they're up here winning awards on an annual basis. I met Sandra Floyd, runs Outsource Consulting. Another woman, outstanding businesswoman, who it doesn't matter what happens for her, good days and bad, she's optimistic and upbeat. Jim Harris, I met Jim Harris, ICA board member. Jim and I happen to see the world in very similar ways. I think we might be related. This is a trip that we took to the White House together to kind of go there and talk about ICA. And Jim and I agree on everything except once a year on election day. We both go into different curtains. You know, but one of us is always happy, one of us is always sad. We let that go for a few days and then we come back together and do more great work at ICA. Alan King, Excellent Packaging Services. Give a shout out to Alan. I met him in the ICA class and he's become a good friend, outstanding business person. And what I love to see, he came, got something from ICA, and what does he do in response? He buys a table. Hint, hint. Kat Taylor, CEO of One Pacific Coast Bank. I've met some great banking people. Will Hobbs from Community Bank of the Bay. Willie Nat from Wells Fargo Bank. Jeff Chung from Gateway, used to be the CEO at One Pacific. Fantastic banking people, well, she's one of them. And the reason I put her picture up here is because over the last couple of weeks, there's an entrepreneur going through a very, very, very tough situation. That's all I have to say. And like at midnight, there's this email strand that goes around, and Kat's in the strand, like 12 to 1 a.m. And she says things like, have you given the keys back to the landlord? I'm not saying don't give them back, but maybe you shouldn't give them back. And I was like, Kat's got some street in her, you know? Like, you know, Kat is committed. She sees the world similar to many of us. We got rules and we've got guidelines, but we got reality. And sometimes we have to solve problems in an innovative way. Angela Tsai runs Oaklandish. She's all in. There's her store. Got great garments. Got a great cool factor. Nina Joyner runs the Fillmore Adult Gallery. Some of y'all started jumping up in your seats. I'll leave it at that. But anyway, she runs the Fillmore. I'd encourage you to go by and check her out and meet her. She's such a pleasure, an intellectual firehouse. Tanya Holland, Brown Sugar Kitchen, B-Side Barbecue, great entrepreneur in the ICA network. Mateo, Mr. Ghee from Ancient Organics, makes this ghee, cooks at a higher flash point, far better than butter, medicinal qualities to it. These are people that are all in. Nona Lim from Cook, gluten-free, dairy-free, healthy, good for you. You can get it and take it home and act like you actually did something. You just kind of throw in her walk. Her and her team have done all the work, and it's good for you too. That's the thing about these entrepreneurs. They're all doing positive things that are good for you. Tanya Scott and Meredith Akers won the ICA award in the fall, Education Support Services, great supporters of ICA. We heard about these guys. These guys are celebrities. These guys are rock stars. It's to the point where we're just happy that they come and show up when we have a function. Outstanding guys, 2 geniuses, 2 marketing geniuses. Natalie Huerta, the perfect sidekick, also a Mills alum from the class of 2011. She runs a training center, personal training, get your body in shape. It's focused on the LGBT community, but she'll take anybody. And from what I've seen walking through here, this is a target-rich environment. Deborah Alley Flint, from the Port of Oakland, fellow board member. Got to give Deborah a shout, so I'm trying to get a fast pass at the airport. But anyway, Deborah was with us at the White House. We all go in, get through security clearance. Deborah can't get through. Of all people, Deborah can't get through. This is a true story. Some people know they were there. Deborah can't get through. So we can't get in to have the meeting because Deborah can't get in. We're not going without Deborah. Finally, the phone rings. They go, Deborah, Miss Flint. She walks up, picks it up. Hey, Barack, what's happening? Yeah, okay, yeah, be right up. Boom. Okay, you can all go through. Now that's Port Authority. Eric Moore, a good friend of mine, just started Base VC, Base Ventures, a fund to invest in angel rounds. Now here he is with Barack. Here's another shot with him and Barack. Most people don't get 2 shots with Barack. The other thing I like here is, look, see, Barack has on the same clothes. Eric has retuned, okay? That's because Eric is rich and Barack is working on a government salary. We got Penelope and Raquel and Oak Collective. I love it when the pop-ups just stay up. They just stay up because they're successful and they're good businesses. Kebakante, Gorilla Cafe, and Chasing Lions. This is what All In looks like. The road to 25,000. I'm talking about 25,000 jobs. I mean, we're here celebrating ICA's 2,500 jobs. I know you can't be satisfied with that. I mean, you could be, but I'm encouraging you sort of not to be. Based on who's in this room, this is the kind of number that we should be talking about. We have the ability to actually get this done. We don't need the government to do a whole lot. Entrepreneurs never have. We find a way. We find a way. I wanted to talk about what we can do to make this come true and really get back to the theme of what does all in mean. To the corporations that are here, pay small businesses on time. Now, some of you are like, we pay them on time. Well, people wouldn't be applauding if that was happening, okay? Sometimes you don't have to do analysis or hire consultants to do studies. Are we paying them on time? All you have to do is listen. This needs to happen. If you pay a small business on time, they don't have to get a credit line that's as high as they do otherwise. 30% of that credit line is because they don't get paid on time. And then if you take longer to pay them, they need more of a credit line, and right now it's real hard to get a credit line. So this is something you could do to be all in. The other one, more important, is pay them enough. You gotta pay them enough. So it's like, it's great to do business with small businesses, but have you asked them, are you making any money? I mean, are you making any money? You should care about that. Now, I know when you're doing business with other big businesses, you don't ask them that question. It's important to ask this question of small businesses. You're gonna be surprised when you get the answer. You're gonna be really surprised. And there's a way for you to do it. I've got plenty of ideas, I don't have time to go into it. I believe you've got the creativity to figure it out. But you gotta start by asking the question, because what's good for the goose is good for the gander. I didn't know what that meant, I looked it up, and here's what it means. That's a male goose, is a gander. So what I'm talking about here is, this is the top. This is the corporate headquarters. They always look really nice. The glass doesn't have any fingerprints. There's carpeting on the floors. Okay, this is kind of how it looks. And things are different here. Even the air smells different, and the water's double purified. Okay, this is what it's like at the top. The other thing that happens here is people get paid up front. People negotiate deals. I don't have any problem with those things. I love all those things. All I'm saying is, if it's good there, it's good here too. Okay? I'm just asking you to take the same things you do up there on the carpet and pull it down to the tiles and the cement floors. Because it's all about trust. That's what I believe. It's about trust. It's when we get on the carpeting floors, big company to big company, we trust one another. And for some reason, it's a little harder. Maybe you have to make sure you have people in your company who can build that kind of a trust with a small business. I couldn't resist it. I mean, what's he saying? I don't really know. I just love The Godfather. And I always have to have a Godfather or a Revolver movie reference in every presentation. But actually, I'm going somewhere with this. Sonny, it's not personal, it's business. Okay? Here's what I mean about this. This is a strange phenomenon that I've experienced. You're sitting down doing business with a big company, and this odd thing happens where the person says to you, so, what are you gonna do with this $1 million contract? You know, I make $55,000 a year. And I'm like, oh no, because it's gotten personal. They don't think that way when they send a $10 million check to Dell for computers, or $5 million check to Hewlett-Packard. They only think that way when they're sitting with a small business person because it gets personal. Well, let me just pass on a few things. This $1 million contract, there's something that maybe you don't know of called cost of sales, cost of goods sold. That gets subtracted from that $1 million contract. There's something you may not think about called overhead that gets subtracted from that. And I will tell you, and bet you a lot of money, this small business person getting this first $1 million contract isn't gonna make any money. Let me tell you why, because small business people make a mistake. They bid too low just to get in because they think, oh, if I get in, I'm gonna be able to raise my prices. You're not gonna ever be able to raise your prices. It doesn't happen. Don't do this. It doesn't happen. So I'm just saying, for the small business person, don't fall into that trap. Don't buy work unless you got the money and the padding and the banking to make that kind of strategic decision. And if you're a big company person, don't get personal. It's not about you and that person. Because there's nothing wrong with having millionaires in the inner city. There's nothing wrong with this at all. You know? And I mean millionaires doing legal things, you know. We know about illegal millionaires in the inner city, but those businesses are not sustainable, okay? We're talking about good businesses. It's really an okay thing to do. I'd love to be in the Fox Theater next year, and we're awarding all the newly minted millionaires. I don't mean the newly minted had $1 million contracts, because most of those people don't have any money in their pocket. I'm talking about newly minted millionaires, because the thing about these businesses and all the people who are on this stage, they all live in Oakland. They live in the cities, and they spend the money in the cities. They don't go to the suburbs. They stay here. So if you want to have people able to buy the stuff that you're selling, this is the best way to do it. Create some inner city millionaires. To the entrepreneurs, what's good for the goose is good for the gander. You gotta deliver. You gotta deliver. We say it all the time in the class, you have to deliver. You can't go in there half-stepping, and you might say, well, that's unfair, there's more pressure on me. Yes, there is. You have got to deliver. Because when you're small and you get in a big company, believe it or not, somebody in that big company has taken a risk. That's the way it is. It's like when you bring in a small business, who brought them in? Somebody's kind of labeled with them. They're rooting for you because they took the risk. Maybe it shouldn't be that way. It is that risk. The other thing is to be consistent. You don't want to come in doing great and then go down. You want to be consistent. So sometimes it's better to wait until you're ready to get this big company business. The other thing to the small businesses, hire the hard to employ. A lot of us are working in this area. For the big companies, they are working and they are trying, but they got to have committees, task forces, inside legal opinions, outside legal opinions, risk management teams, assessments. Okay, they got to do so much to make this happen. We can make it happen. I do it. Just meet my team. I couldn't resist it. But what I'm saying here is there are people who have gone through some tough times. They need work, and it's something that we can do for them. So I'm going to show you a picture of some ex-offenders. Brace yourself, but I just want you to get ready for the kinds of people you're going to need to start thinking about hiring. I don't know about you, but when I walk down the street and I see people that look like this, I get horrified. I have been mugged internationally. All I lost was like 20 bucks. These cats will take millions, your whole retirement fund, and wreck a whole community. These are the kind of criminals that I'm really afraid of. But sooner or later, they'll get out. They need another chance. This guy looks reformed. Maybe he needs another chance. This guy, well, actually, he won't look like that when he gets out. This guy, I wouldn't hire him. You don't have to hire every ex-convict. Okay, but you get the point? And many of you are doing this. We have the responsibility as small businesses to find a way to give people an opportunity, because you give somebody that opportunity, we all know what happens. Nothing but great things. They don't let you down. When the press shows up, mention ICA. That's what I'm asking you to do. I'm not saying mention ICA before your company name, but why not? Okay? ICA is a nonprofit. The only way we get to create 2,500 jobs and 25,000 jobs is we got to raise money to be able to do that, so we can help more companies. We want this event at the Coliseum. That's what we want, so we need your help to make that happen. Finally, don't forget what got you here. Don't forget what got you here. I got my friend Mike Sabri up here. And his firm just received an award. And largely, the reason they got that award is because of great work, but it all started with Mike Sabri. I was working with an ICA company. There was a tough issue. Mike Sabri was on one side. We had Dick Lyons from Wendell Rosendean on the other side. We worked, did the best we could. And at the end, Michael said, you know what? I really admired what you did. Tell me something about this ICA. I go to his office and talk to him about ICA. And he goes, maybe I want to do that. And I'm like, hey, why don't you get your firm to do it? You think you can get your firm to do it? And he's drinking, it looks like some juice. And he goes, hey, I'll go grab a couple of people and come back in. He gets up and leaves. I'm like, what? He's like gonna make something happen now. This is highly unusual. I like this guy. So he leaves. I immediately sniff his juice because I'm like, he must be drinking gin and juice. This is like one of those alcoholic, problematic lawyer guys. And I sniffed it. It was like grapefruit juice. You know, anyway, he comes back in and the firm just jumps in and gets on board. And so they've got a sliding scale in place to help companies and to help companies grow. Well, we've had a few companies that have been successful and taken advantage of services like this, and then later they move to a different law firm because they're getting 30% less or 20% off. And what I'm saying is, you need to stick with the group that got you there. Okay, when you get in the position where you can make money, you need to spend it with the people who took no money and got you in a position where you can make some money. Mark Zuckerberg. I'm putting him up here for a few reasons. One is that I respect the guy. The guy could have been a billionaire about 5 years ago, could have taken the $3 million from Microsoft and put it in his pocket. He didn't. He kept pursuing his dream. But I've got him up here for a different reason. I've got him up here because here's a guy who raised millions of dollars. Never once had his FICO score checked. Never once had to give a personal guarantee. Never once had to give a drug test. All things that I'm aware of that people have to do to try and raise money. Now, I get it. I went to business school. This is a huge market opportunity. And when there's a huge market opportunity, you suspend the rules. You do whatever you can to get on this gravy train so you can ride it, because if it hits, it's gonna hit. I get it, I completely get it. All I'm saying is, what about thinking about another huge market opportunity? A market opportunity of creating 25,000 jobs. A market opportunity where people are employed and are able to pay a fair, livable wage and provide health care. A market opportunity where people who are involved in this network spend their money in the inner city, which we know are safer and people more and more educated and are fulfilled and have a whole lot more dignity. We also know people in the inner city will hire ex-offenders. If we thought about that market opportunity, is that not a compelling market opportunity? Is that not a huge, great vision? Does that not take care of most of society's problems? Well, if you believe that, then how come we can't suspend some of the rules here? Okay? How come we have entrepreneurs going to get a loan, putting their house up, putting their car up. We have an incident in their past from 5 years ago, and they've cleaned it up, but they still have a low score, and it prevents them from getting capital. All I'm trying to say is what's good for the goose is good for the gander. That if we believe in the market opportunity, if we really believe this makes society much better, we're gonna have to stop doing things the same way. And if you're like, oh, we have these rules and regulations. Well, the rules and regulations didn't help us in 2008. So a lot of times rules and regulations are just reasons to do the same old thing. If we want a different result, we're gonna have to do things differently. Rain Free. From Red Door Catering. We've been enjoying her great food. I met Rain Free at the last ICA event where she had her great food out. I'll never forget her shrimp and grits. I don't know if you've had them. Okay, they're monstrous. I had them. When you have a party, I've had a few events, she's always there, delivering. If you know anything about Rain Free's story, I'm not saying anything that's not on the internet. She was homeless about 6 years ago, got her life together, and is now killing it in the catering business. This is the appropriate way to wind things up. I have a vision for Rain Free and for other people like her, that they will not be judged by their gender, they will not be judged by the size of their business, but they will be judged by the content of their shrimp and grits. Thank you very much.